I don't believe that anybody feels the way I do about you now. And all the roads we have to walk are winding, and all the lights that lead us there are blinding. And there are many things that I would like to say to you, but I don't know how. But maybe you're gonna be the one that saves me. And after all, you're my wonderwall.
All right, happy hump day. Welcome back to Morning Coffee with Rick Alexander. Last week, we talked a little bit about the idea of a soul and how we are sort of in charge of our own matter, i.e. our bodies. And then yesterday, I spoke a little bit about the fact that we are the ones that are in charge of our own destiny. And so if you never allow yourself to be happy earnestly, then you never actually will be. It's only you that could change that. And so today what I wanted to do is I wanted to introduce you to a premise that ties those things together. And the premise is this: most of your world and most of your life occur in your mind. They occur between your ears. In fact, most of the world is in our mind. If you think about the way that the human psyche works, is we have to create a narrative around everything. It's how we piece things together in our world. So we create a story about what something is, and then we act on that story, and we essentially live that story out. So whatever the narrative we create about the matter that is outside of us is the narrative that we act on. So what would be an example of that? Is a cup. Okay, so if you look at a cup, it's just nothing but an inanimate object. It's just matter, right? What makes it a cup is the story that you've created around that thing. Now, when you and I and then multiple people agree that the narrative around a certain piece of matter is the exact same, then we call that reality. But it doesn't change the fact that the actual thing between us is nothing. The only thing that makes that something is the narrative that you apply to it. So think about this in your life. Like, there's many times in your life where what's really going on isn't that much, except the narrative that you have around that thing is causing it to feel a certain way to you or to look a certain way to you. And so you can think about all of the things in your life, literally everything in your life, and you can think about the narrative that you have around that. What is the story you're telling yourself about that thing? You know, this is why you and I could live in the exact same country, and I could see that country as a land of opportunity, and you could see it as a land of oppression, because we've created completely different narratives around what that thing actually is. And so in very real ways, you and I are living in two very different worlds. But I really like this. I think it's liberating because it gives you the opportunity to reevaluate the narrative around everything in your life and ask yourself if whether or not that thing is serving you. I think where we really screw the pooch on this narrative thing is when you get into relationships. So I'll just share one with my own life, and then you can try to think about how this is probably played out in different forms in your life. So I had a girlfriend who deep down, I felt personally like I was never actually going to be good enough for her. That was the narrative that I was living out in my head. It's just how I felt. I didn't really feel like I had a lot of control over it. And instead of facing it, all I did was try to ignore it. So as I live out this narrative that I'll never be good enough, what it does is it causes me to subconsciously cut that person down. Because if my ego feels like I can bring them down to my level, then it's okay. If I'm not good enough for them, I can bring them to me. Now, of course, I would never choose to do that by my own volition. But if you don't check the narrative in your head, you're going to act it out anyway. Now, what this caused was her to have a narrative in her head that there was somebody better for me than her. And so that's the way that she thought about it in her own life. And so you can see the narrative that I had influenced the narrative that she had. And so two people who were really in love were never actually going to end up together because we both lived out narratives that made sure we didn't. And again, you can do this with every single part of your life. And you can see how this plays out in our lives over and over with everything that we do. And so it really, I think there's a real reason here to pull the brakes back and think about the narrative around everything that you're doing. Think about the last time that you failed. I mean, if we're being super honest, failure in itself has different narratives to many different people. And the one that you have about that is probably the one that's going to decide whether or not your life is actually successful and you get the things that you want. I was at a business conference one time and I saw there were 7 people on the panel all answering questions, and they were all millionaires. And when it got to me, the question that I asked them is, who here has had a failed business? Every single person reached their hand up. And then I was like, man, what about 3? Every single person. And then the guy that I was talking to, he was like, I've failed 5. And I was like, damn, anybody else 5? Like half of the people raised their hand up. Then somebody else was like, I have 7. And the 2 people raised their hand for 7 failures. And so this group of millionaires has a narrative in their head about what it means to fail. To them, it was clearly an iterative process. To them, failure meant they've learned something that they didn't know, and that they're able to double down on what they do know and continue on. But if the narrative that you have about failure is that it actually makes you a failure, then you're never actually going to get past it. All you're going to do is live that narrative out. The human mind thinks in stories. It's absolutely insane to think about all of the different stories that you have. And if you don't make them aware, it's like that Carl Jung quote, until you make the subconscious conscious, it'll rule your life and you'll call it fate. And that's exactly what's happening here. You have these subconscious narratives that you're not paying attention to. And as you live them out, they're getting you further from the life that you want. At some point, you have to ask yourself, what is the end result of the narrative that I believe about the thing that I'm doing? And if you can change that, you can change your world, because again, most of your world occurs inside of your head. Food for thought. Love you guys. Talk to you later on Morning Coffee.
On the road to safe, I kinda tripped along the way. Just seemed like a nasty hassle. The path was greener on the one less traveled, and that's where I remained. People so high, they think I can't hear the whispers. I can see it falling off their face. They're trying to shoot down my plane of grace. Seems like it's already hard enough. But the pain on me is beginning to dry, and it's not what I want it to be. The weight on me is hanging on to a weary angel. Tell me what it is about me. Where did everybody go without me? So I like to fantasize and watch the sunrise like it's a big surprise. Life moved and I stopped to taste it. I drank it up till it left me wasted, but my veins have bled a softer red. Oh, you should see the world inside my head. Shackle me away, try to wrap around my dreamer. I feel better when I paint my days with purple seas and left out grays. Strange is just a different point of view. But the paint on me is starting to dry, and it's not what I want it to be. The weight on me is holding on to a weary angel. So tell me what it is about me. Where did everybody go without me? So I like to fantasize and watch the sunrise like it's a big surprise. Life moved and I stopped to taste it. I drink it up till it left me wasted, but my veins have bled a softer red. Oh, you should see the world inside my head. I feel better when I paint my days with purple seas and left out grays. Strange is just a different point of view. Tell me what it is about me. Where did everybody go without me? So I like to fantasize and watch the sunrise like it's a big surprise. Life moved and I stopped to taste it. I drank it up till it left me wasted, but my veins have bled softer red. Oh, you should see the world inside my head.